Hi, everybody. We wanted to provide you with an update of the climate and an outlook through 2021. It was a remarkable year in terms of weather, but it was also dry and very warm, which had impacts. Impacts are shown here. The drought has developed in Southern California and expanded in Northern California. Now, fortunately, so far, the drought is rated as abnormally dry in Southern California, which just means a large deficit, but can be the beginning of drought. The main storm track has been well to our north, even last year, but also this year, as shown here in the blue line. This has resulted in very dry conditions so far in the water year 2020-2021. Some extreme events are listed here, which includes what we're going to talk about, the hottest June through October 2020 across Southern California, and an extreme fire weather season as a result. Here's a look at some of the recent large wildfires in Southern California. I want you to notice several of them. The Valley, El Dorado, and Apple were the largest in 2020. But we also had significant impact wildfires in Orange County, including Silverado, Blue Ridge, and most recently the bonfire in December 2020. Why so warm this past summer? Dominant upper level ridge of high pressure, two separate systems, not the one that affects us in the winter, such as last year and this year, but the main upper level high pressure system centered directly over us through most of the summer. Here's some of the heat waves we had in 2020 to look back upon. Remarkable heat wave in early September, Labor Day weekend. That one is the most significant, with numerous records broken. Here's a look back at that particular weekend. We had some all-time records broken, including Chino and Ontario, as well as El Cajon, Alpine, and Idlewild. June through October 2020, across the South Coast, which is LA to San Diego, including Riverside, was the hottest June through October on record, as shown here. Across the state of California, same thing, hottest on record. Here's some data courtesy of Scripps, University of California at San Diego. You can see not only did we have over a dozen heat waves, but in particular, those heat waves were exceptionally hot days, as shown by the asterisk here. This is for coastal Southern California 2020. 2020 temperatures look like this on a map. Not the hottest year on record for calendar year 2020, but nonetheless significant, top 10. Now notice the mountain areas were the hottest as far as departure from normal in the deep red shade here. Let's take a look at some individual locations. Escondido, 2020 temperatures ranked number 3 as shown here. If you look at Escondido for June through October, well, that period, it was number 1. Even in our mountain locations, it was hot June through October. Idlewild came in at number 1. Santa Ana, if you look at that location in Orange County, you can see the trend has been concerning. The past several years are all ranked in the top 10, as shown here, for annual temperatures. Anza Borrego State Park also had a hot summer and a hot year. You can see they also have that trend of the recent years all landing in the top 10. Palm Springs, California had a remarkable hot summer. Their annual temperature came in as shown here in 4th place, 77.1. Looking at the summer of 2020 for Palm Springs, you can see it ended up with average temperature hottest on record. Why so hot in Palm Springs? Well, if you look at just streaks such as 100-degree days or higher, 151 shattered the old record. Now, if you look at days where it reached 110 or higher, 66 days. That shattered the record set back in 1957. Very hot. Palm Springs, the most days of 120. Well, yeah, in 2020, you guessed it, 5 days, which is the most on record. The fall of 2020 came out like this since the start of the water year. Right-hand side, most areas, unfortunately in California, including Southern California, are 50% or less of average, as showed it in the shaded red. Now, also look at the departure from normal temperatures. Most of the state of California has been mild. If you look at the precipitation rankings, October through December 2020, this shows clearly that Southern California has been doing the best, similar to last year. Albeit it's relative, we still have most of our area in the orange shaded, which is between 40 and 70% of average. Now, what's been different this year versus last year, where I mentioned Southern California did better? Well, this year we have the same upper level ridge of high pressure, much stronger than it should be. The anomaly is shown in the deep orange-red shade here, showing it being much stronger or warmer than average. That's pushed our jet stream further to the north as that has settled southward, blocking the storm track into most of California. Last year, well, we had the same weather pattern, but it was shifted several hundred miles to the north. That allowed a little bit of a weakness along that black line, and a few storms did drop south, and they were rather strong, taking aim on Southern California. So just a little bit shift in this unusual weather pattern that has been persistent since 2019 has made a difference, but overall it has resulted in, yes, dry conditions across California. Dry conditions impact many things, including the fuel moisture. Our live fuel moisture in our vegetation was at record lows as we entered into mid-December 2020. The dead fuel moisture also was at record lows, as shown here, into mid-December 2020. How's it looking now? Well, our fuel, thanks to the rain in late December, our fuel moistures are now not average. They're still below average, but they've jumped up well above the record lows. So we've made significant progress in moistening at least our dead fuel moisture. We are still in Santa Ana season, and that's important to remember. We can still see significant Santa Ana wind events in January and February. In fact, Santa Ana season on average peaks out in December and January. What are we looking at in the ocean? We always talk about El Nino and La Nina as it relates to our precipitation. Right now we have a weak La Nina that continues to impact the equatorial Pacific Ocean. Elsewhere in the Pacific, though, very warm waters just won't go away as a result of that weather pattern we just discussed in the prior slides, allowing the water in the eastern Pacific to continue to remain much above average. Speaking of weather patterns, La Ninas do tend to drive the jet stream further north, as shown here in red, and that does appear to be happening. But it also appears that the current weather pattern is superimposed with a La Nina on top of what already was an amplified weather pattern, as shown here. Typically in La Ninas, though, Southern California ends up being drier than average and the Pacific Northwest wetter than average. But we have seen quite a difference in La Nina and El Nino years. On the left-hand side was two very wet but opposites, La Nina and El Nino, and on the right-hand side was a recent very dry La Nina. We do have to remember, though, even in the moderate La Nina back in 2010, yes, 2010, that massive atmospheric river occurred during a moderate La Nina. Impact was significant in 2010 December with heavy rain across all of Southern California in a 3 to 4 day period. That resulted in flooding and even landslides across much of Southern California, even without burn scars. So when's the next chance of rain? Well, if we look towards the end of January and into early February, it appears that dry conditions could persist at least through mid-January 2021. That also results in mild or warmer than average temperatures as shown here. The official forecast indicates that the middle part of January is expected to be dry across most of California, much drier than it should be. Doesn't mean that there won't be any rain, but January is a wet month on average, so this is compared to average. It also indicates that conditions will be mild or much warmer than average. If we look deeper into January, the latter part of January, the second half, we can see that the jet stream is expected to stay a little too far to our north, and that puts us in the drier and milder conditions. Now looking further out for February 2021, is there any chance of a pattern change? The latest information indicates no, and keeping conditions wet up in British Columbia and Washington, but much drier than average in California. The official outlook for January through March is shown here, keeping the storm track as we predicted earlier across the Pacific Northwest. So that leads to milder and much drier conditions, at least for that period, January through March, across Southern California. That also indicates that we likely have the development and expansion of drought, even in Southern California. Here's a summary of what you need to know about 2020. We had a very dry and late monsoon season. We had an incredibly hot summer in some places of California, June through October, hottest on record. And on average across the state, including Southern California, hottest summer on record. We had a historical heat wave that really put an exclamation mark on the summer that occurred September 2020. Despite a wet year in 2019-20, the hot summer paid its toll with critically dry fuel conditions, even record low fuel conditions in October 2020. 14 different heat waves contributed to the extreme fire weather conditions. We even saw record sea surface temperatures along the coast of Southern California. The largest fire season in California occurred in 2020. In Southern California, I listed 7 different burn scars, and most of those will be a continued impact because of flood after fires. Santa Ana winds were slightly above average. We had 12 different events. A couple of those were strong in fall of 2020, leading to additional fires. More Santa Ana wind events are expected January and February 2021. We are not through the peak of Santa Ana season. Now, the outlook predicts warmer conditions than average and most of the rest of the winter being drier than average. However, that doesn't mean we can't see heavy rainfall events. Overall, drier than average through this winter. Part of this is the result of the weak to moderate La Nina that's in place. That's the cold phase along the equatorial Pacific Ocean. I want to remind you that when you visit weather.gov San Diego, several areas where you can monitor and plot current and past weather conditions, such as here, plotting Santa Ana winds. You also can look at real-time rainfall data and plot it, as shown here. When you want to look at specific watches and warnings that we issue, you can plot it on a map such as shown here. If you want specific weather forecast information at a point location, I encourage you to try out the forecast point matrix here.